Good afternoon po sa ating lahat. Loud and clear po ba ako, ma'am and sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes po.
Yes po. Again, good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful Wednesday as we welcome our third episode of the webinar workshop series on extension for coordinators and implementers. Kamusta po kayong lahat? Maraming salamat po sa muling pagsama sa amin sa ating workshop ngayong hapon. At gaya po ng mga nakaraang session, ay siguradong marami po tayong matututunan sa mga napakagandang topic mula po sa napakagaling natin na resource speaker. I am Paula Ducusin, your host for today's session. Again, I would like to remind everyone of our house rules bago po tayo magsimula sa program proper. Please remain your mic on mute, especially during the presentation of our speaker, and kindly remain your camera on off to avoid unnecessary actions and distractions. We can use the chat box dito po sa Zoom para sa mga participants natin sa Zoom, and sa comment box naman po via FB Live. And then, yung ating pong open forum after the presentation ng ating speaker. To start our activity, inaanyayahan po natin lahat na makiisa sa panalangin sa pangunguna po ni Ms. Razel Asadillo mula sa Extension Services. Ms. Razel.
Panandalian po tayong tumahimik para sa isang munting panalangin. Ama naming Diyos, lubos ang aming papuri at pasasalamat sa lakas, kalusugan at mga biyaya na inyong ipinagkakaloob. Maraming salamat sa bagong araw na muli kami magkakasama ngayon para sa panibagong talakayan. Buong puso kaming humihingi sa inyong kapatawaran sa aming mga kakulangan, kamalian at mga naging kahinaan. Humihingi po kami sa inyo, aming Ama, ng inyong basbas at pagpapala para sa katuparan at malawak na pangunawa para aming maisa-isip, maisa-puso at maisagawa ang bawat kaalaman aming matututunan. Hayaan mo, Panginoon, na ang iyong kabutihan at kapangyarihan ang manguna para sa lalong ikatatagumpay ng mga gawain ito. Patuloy mo nawang gabayan ang aming tagapagsanay, mga namumuno, extension coordinators at implementers at maging lahat ng participants para sa lalong ikayayabong ng serbisyong pang-extension. Ang lahat ng ito, Panginoon, ay tinataas namin sa inyo, aming Ama. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Razel. Again po, para po sa mga participants, kindly remain naka-mute po ang ating mga mic as well as the camera. Thank you. Gusto ko rin po i-acknowledge ang ating mga virtual participants via Zoom and FB Live, the deans, administrators, faculty and staff, extension coordinators and implementers ng colleges, campuses, and RDE units, maging ang mga participants po mula sa mga other SUCs. Thank you so much po. And students na makikibahagi sa ating workshop. To count, we have 429 registered participants and counting. Bago ko po ipakilala ang ating tagapagsalita, let's have a short rewind ng mga kaganapan during our previous sessions. Session 1, Topic 1, the Introduction to Extension and Ugnayan 2.0 discussed by Dr. Almira Magcawas, and Topic 2, Area 6 of Accreditation by Dr. Adolfo Manuel. Then the Session 2, Topic 1, Community Research by Dr. Almira Magcawas, and the Topic 2 discussed by Forester Filino Gutierrez, the Participatory Rural Appraisal. So the evaluation po natin again, wag po natin kakalimutan ng evaluation after the session para makakuha po tayo ng Certificate of Participation and Completion. To introduce our keynote speaker for this session, our speaker is graduate of Bachelor of Arts in Economics in Ateneo de Davao University as cum laude. She is a Doctor of Philosophy in Extension Education with master's degree in Agricultural Extension. She also worked as Director for Ugnayan ng Pahinungod Oblation Corps, the voluntarism of the unit of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, from March 2010 to 2013. Major accomplishments: spearheaded the revision of modules for NSTP 1 and 2 and wrote the Module 7 on NSTP 1 objective setting and NSTP 2 water purification in NSTP common modules. She is also the former IGRD Director from October 15, 2014 and to September 30, 2017. Her major accomplishment was all course offerings of the college under the programs of MS, DMG, MS, and PhD in Extension Education, MPAF, Major in Education Management, Strategic Planning and Policies, Agrarian Reform Studies for OBDICE. Together with the Dean of the Graduate School, she also spearheaded the offering of the first off-campus program of the PhD DVST in UP Mindanao. She also spearheaded the proposal on PhD DVST with specialization on education and development, which was approved and now offered as an off-campus and regular program offering. She was awarded as one of UP Professionals Chair for Capacity Building and Rural Development in University of the Philippines System Award and received several awards as International Publication Awardee. Wow. An outstanding alumna for research and education of the University of Southern Mindanao in Cabacan, Cotabato, and distinguished awardee of the Division 1 of the National Research Council of the Philippines Department of Science and Technology, and also recognized as UP Scientist 2 in 2017 and 2019. She is now the Professor 11 from January 2019 up to present, and Dean of College of Public Affairs and Development in University of the Philippines, Los Baños, from February 21 up to 2024. To discuss the methods in the new normal, let's all give a warm welcome and virtual applause to Dr. Rowena de la Torre-Baconguis. Welcome po, Dr. Baconguis.
Thank you, Paula. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear. The floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you.
Maraming salamat sa iyong introduction, and good afternoon kay Vice President for Research and Extension, Dr. Melbourne. Palakpak ang ating pong napakabata at energetic na Vice President. At syempre kay Almira, Dr. Magkawas, sa pag-imbita. Salamat sa pag-imbita sa akin dito sa CABSU. Ang CABSU po ay isa sa mga universities na napakarami ko pong personal friends. Hindi ko na mo kayo isa-isahin, baka magtampo po kayo. At ayan, si Dr. Teddy. Maraming salamat po sa pag-imbita uli. It's good to be back. Wag ka na magtampo, Dr. Benedict Medina. Pati po sa Batangas, marami din po akong kaibigan sa Batangas State University. Baka magtampo si Dr. Medina. Pero yun po, natutuwa po akong makabalik po uli, Dr. Teddy, dito sa CABSU. And once again, share, whatever it is that I can share with you. So ngayong hapon po, ang binigay po sa akin na topic ay, paano na nga ba yun mag-share? Sandali lang po. Ang binigay po na topic sa akin ni Dr. Magkawas ay, ito po, bakit? Yan. Extension methods in the new normal, So, meron bang pagbabago sa mga ginagawa natin? At dapat ba magkaroon ng pagbabago? At ano itong mga pagbabagong ito? I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about, And I think that's a very important thing to talk about. So, I hope also that with this sharing, I can also learn from you, It's not only one way. Magandang hapon din nga pala sa lahat ng mga nanonood dyan sa Facebook at sa mga taga-ibang universities. Marami po ako nakita ng mga kakilala ko din from different universities. Good afternoon po. So ngayong hapon po ito yung ating pag-uusapan. Sabi ko pa nga kay Mira, gaano kahaba ba ang ini-expect nyo sa akin? Sabi niya, ma'am, ikaw lang ang speaker. Ano kayong ibig sabihin nun? Pero sabi niya, mga 1 oras, okay na. So I hope you are all awake because afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon is a difficult time. So we'll try to hit that 1 p.m. and then 1 hour, and then we'll have a question and answer. Okay. So I divided it into 4. I know that you're interested in extension methods, but I started with the current context of HEIs. And then we go into the topic of your interest, which is extension methods in the new normal. And then as a result of that, how can we further improve our extension offering? So I have there facing the future challenges. And then there will be a topic also on what kind of research can we conduct based on the things that we do in extension. So I added a little bit of the topic extension research themes. This is actually one of my major topics in a recently concluded extension conference. So I added a little bit of that here, because I think it's an interesting topic. They made me think about this. And so I hope that will be useful for you as well. So let us start with the first one, the current context of HEIs. As we know, universities play a very important role in achieving societal goals. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have the trilogy of functions, which is research, which means to create knowledge, to test knowledge. Instruction, very important because we are the ones in charge of educating students to become tomorrow's leaders. And extension, very important as well, primarily because the outputs of research has to be taught to the users of research. And at the same time, we have a role to educate the populace. Out of school youth, our citizenry for any important topic as of the moment. So that's extension, and we'll try to understand more of that. So when we talk about societal goals, when the university started or when SUC started, we know for a fact that we started with making it important that we identify with our nation. That is why the first role really of the universities is to make sure that Filipinos, for example, will have a Filipino identity. So that's very important, and which is why we educate them on that, not only on topics that are specific to one's discipline, but more importantly, to make sure that they contribute to the nation. So that's national identities. But as the years went by, we acquired another role, which is our role as global citizens. So we're no longer just Filipinos. We are also global citizens. But of course, to be a global citizen, it is very important that we also know what it is to become a Filipino and to contribute to our nation, right? So that is very important. But suffice it to say that from national identities, we have a new role, which is global citizenship. Because also we know that when we talk of issues like climate change, it is not bounded within the nation. The problems are global in that aspect. Let's talk about, for example, the pandemic right now. It's not just bounded within a particular nation. It is, it crisscrosses our boundaries, and which is why it is very important to understand these things and how we can, maximize opportunities and at the same time control the problems as a result of this, the world becoming smaller and boundaries becoming, not that clear anymore. So, for one, global citizenship has also been part of our role as in the university, primarily because of accreditation, primarily because of rankings, and which is why we more or less try to approximate what they mean by being the best universities. And so, for example, in rankings, they place a lot of importance on publication, they place a lot of importance on citation, for example, and we try to do that because we want to be among the best of the best, Parang hindi naman mamaliitin ang ating mga universities dito sa Pilipinas. And so we say that our role is from national identities to global citizenship, not forgetting that the basis of that global citizenship is our national identity. Okay, so the latest game changer so far is the pandemic that we are experiencing now. No, I say it's the latest game changer, primarily because in the past there had been triggers also. No, so we talk about, for example, the first industrial revolution, the second industrial revolution, the third industrial revolution, and each time there are new things that we do in the universities. So for example, when the third industrial revolution came in, that's when we made use of computers. That's when we made use of using technologies to deliver, for example, ano bang tawag ditong open university, no, na style na we have students offshore, for example, no, and we have, for example, multiple modules where others can enroll at their own pace. So that's how we had been affected also, and that's how we changed to make sure that we are able to accomplish and contribute to nation building. So the latest, as I would say, that you know, had a lot of impact on the way we do things is the pandemic, no? And I don't think I have to go into how it affected our teaching, because that's another topic, and I'm sure, you know, you're very familiar with that. But when we talk of the new this pandemic, for example, or the new realities, it's not just about it's not just about the coronavirus. The new normal is actually what they say as the occurrence of unexpected changes. So the pandemic is one, but then the new normal expects us to be prepared for future disruptive changes. You know, these disruptive changes does not just happen in 10 years. They happen just, you know, in days. And therefore, the transformations in the way we do things have to be abrupt, just like what happened with the pandemic. So they're saying that this is not the first and the last when it comes to disruptive changes. There will be more. It can be in the form of another pandemic, or it can be because of the fourth industrial revolution, for example, game-changing technologies. No, when we look at history, for example, and go back to what happened in the past, is this coronavirus the first one of the pandemics? Now, of course, you know, it's not, right? Like, we had pandemics in the past, we survived them, but the nature of this coronavirus is far more different from the different pandemics in the past. Primarily because the impact was immediate, no? Bigla na lang, it's here, and you know, it's very contagious, and it can be deadly, and you know, we have to keep ourselves safe by being at home, by being quarantined, by being locked down. Oh, that's terrible, no? If you come to think of it, I have had questions about what is life for if we're just, you know, spend it within our houses. And which is why, you know, people want to go outside, and you know, how do you balance the interest of going outside and living your life, and at the same time, you know, making sure that you don't infect people, you don't put people at risk because of your going out, right? So to summarize, what we're saying is that pandemics are not new. What is new is the nature of this pandemic and the transformations that we had to do as a result of this pandemic. Another thing probably that would make a lot of changes in the future with the fourth industrial revolution, and something that we have been talking about for quite some time. It's another game changer, primarily because the technologies that are you know, that we will be using is different from what we are using right now. And just like the different industrial revolutions, there will be a lot of changes, there will be a lot of displacements, there will be a lot of problems created, but at the same time, there will be a lot of opportunities, right? So the only problem is how to make sure that people will not be left behind, or a lot of people will not be left behind because of this fourth industrial revolution. And once again, making sure that this will become more inclusive is a function of the universities as well, no? So I'm sure some of you have heard of this, or most of you have heard of this, that in other countries, in UK, for example, they have been successful in experimenting a robotic farm where, you know, from preparation, land preparation to harvesting, no one set foot inside of that farm, but all operations were conducted inside a room, you know, where they use technologies to make sure that there will be no weeds, for example, that there will be nutrients provided for in the field, and it will be harvested properly, no? So nobody set foot in that farm for one planting, one cropping period, no? So, and that's, if you come to think of it, that's wonderful, right? Because that's how far we can you know, how we can make use of this technology. But on the other hand, that's scary, because there are many people who will no longer be employed as a result of this. There will be many industries that will no longer, you know, no longer be there. So, for example, you talk about the pesticides companies, you talk about the fertilizer companies, you talk about so many other companies related to agriculture. They will no longer exist because everything will be done by laser. Everything will be done, you know, the laborers, for farm laborers, and there are many in third world countries. They, you know, they will be no longer useful as far as farms are concerned. And from the perspective of a university, this is something that we have to foresee, we have to forecast, and therefore we have to prepare for, because that means we need to reskill people in preparation for something that more or less we have an idea, right? We have an idea of what to happen, like 60% of it, not 100%, because we're not really sure, no? All of these technologies are still being developed, they're being tested, that more or less we have an idea that this will happen. To the extent and to when it will happen, that's what we do not know. But in our mind, we know that changes are there, and therefore it is our responsibility to make sure that we prepare, you know, the future, the young members of our community, such that they won't have a hard time supporting themselves as well in the future. Okay, so trends in HEIs, in the past, we have been very busy with internationalization, correct? That's one of the things that we that is measured in us, whether we are, you know, competitive globally. So internationalization has been something that we have been working very hard for. When it comes to research publications, we're running after one publication to another. We make sure that it's Scopus, you know, indexed, and so on and so forth. But with the pandemic, we realized that we have to take care of our communities, right? So from this very global perspective and you know, our vision of our universities, suddenly we realized that if our communities are not resilient, then, you know, what will happen to us as universities, and how can we contribute better, right? So from this global perspective, suddenly we were interested in making sure that our communities thrive, that we help out in terms of making sure that people have something to eat, they have a livelihood, they continue with their livelihood if they still have it, and offer them an alternative livelihood if they don't have it. And in so doing, we realize that we can't do everything, right? Making your community resilient is something that is difficult, and therefore we realized that we had to collaborate. With whom? We collaborated with LGUs, we collaborated with private companies, with our alumni who were very helpful as well, no, during this period. And we realized that we need to make use of technology that probably we didn't even hear of before the pandemic, right? Who would think that I would deliver a class online? I'm very, you know, technology disadvantaged in terms of knowledge. So in short, we are in this state right now where we are looking at local, national, and global interests. There are three things, no? So these are a multitude of tasks, and you know, it is a difficult task, but we have to do it if we want to make sure that our community survive, or even our universities survive. Because if you have been reading, for example, news from the US, there's a lot of fears that a lot of universities, private universities for that matter, will close down, or a lot of land-grant universities will lose a lot of their students, primarily because the delivery now is not just limited in class. It's no longer class-based, but somebody from very far away can enroll if it's going to be online. No? So there's a lot of fear that only the best of the universities will survive, and a lot of private universities who charge, for example, very expensive fees will not be able to compete, primarily because you have state universities that ask for less, and it's now more accessible to people even from very far away communities. So there's a lot of fear in first world countries, because they think that we will no longer go back to how we actually conduct our classes. So here I just map out our adjustments in the different revolutions. So in the past, we were just doing, universities were just doing primarily instruction, but with the first and second industrial revolution, universities had to respond to the calls for the times. And during the time, it was about mechanical, agriculture, or practical education, primarily because the main livelihood during that time was agriculture. So and the university started to incorporate research, primarily because the source of development during that time were these technologies that were being churned out by researchers. And so they said, how can we ensure that there will be continuous turnout of new knowledge? And so with that, they said, research has to be part of all of these universities, because they are spread out. They have many talent within that university, physics, chemistry, everybody's there, right? And if they can do research, then we can be sure that society would prosper, because the second revolution, for example, resulted to that. There was a lot of improvement in terms of people's lives. And so they said, well, that should be, in the 18th century, they said, okay, research should be part of the functions, regular functions of these faculty members. And a lot of that more embraced that as time went by. And then also during this time, they problematized that not everybody actually benefit from technology, because there were some who benefited from it and therefore were very far off in terms of advancement, progress in life, for example. And there were many people who were left behind. And so they said, we have to do something about that. How again? And so they look at university and they said, well, in each locality or region, for example, there is this university, and they can be partners in development by sharing latest knowledge or latest technology, or educating the people in very important topics. And so that became the function, our third function, which is extension. So as you can see here, extension started with democratization and nation building. Democratization because we wanted to make sure that people who were not in school will still be educated on very important topics. And nation building primarily because now you make accessible the technologies that could improve their lives. And therefore, people who have better lives would result to, something better. If you take that into, if you lump them all together, that would result to a better, GNP, GDP. So that's the nation building part. Now, having said that, you had I think you have had several topics already on extension, and now we're interested in extension methods in the new normal. So just a briefer, we talk of extension as focused on educational opportunities. And why do we do that? Because we want people to be able to participate, productive involvement in the locality. And as a result of that, we can be sure that this is the kind of development that we want for our communities. That's what extension is all about. But again, a lot of people do not have a general agreement on what extension is. I think I have shared this in the past in many other webinars that people do not agree on the definition of extension. So which is why they say it's unhandy and imprecise. And they said, what is it really all about? So I would always end up saying that normally there are three very important components that would define what extension is all about. So the first is it involves non-formal education. So what are informal education? I'm sure there are many, like the most common would be training. Now it's a webinar. What else? Seminar, workshop, field days. So these are, non-formal education. So anything where you educate people. So that's one. The second is communication, because you cannot, educate without the use of communication. So how do you actually make use of very good communication strategies to be able to make sure that people learn? So, and the last part will be change in practices, a general term that would encompass what you want. Why are you educating people? No? So that is basically, I refer to it as change in practices. So it can be adoption. I think that's a very commonly understood, adoption for one. Where you make sure that people change the way their agricultural practices into the use of technologies that you have introduced, right? So when we talk of extension, generally, we want to make sure that stakeholders help themselves so that they make informed decisions. So meaning to say, when we want to educate people, it is because we want them to make good decisions and follow through, right? Because it's not just knowing. It's not just about knowing. So which is why sometimes probably when you do training, you said, I designed the modules very well. I used very good facilitation skills, but how come, I don't see any changes? Because it takes a lot more when you talk about changing practices. So as you can see from this slide, knowing, for example, people having information is just one of the important characteristics to make sure that they change the way they do things, right? Giving them the skills to do it. So now we're moving into, competencies. They know, they have the skills, they probably have developed the values. So that's already one step forward, but that's just not enough. And all of you who are into extension know this, because that is why they need support, no? So meron kayong mga starter packs, ganyan. You connect them to, you probably have financial support. So this is what we call support, that, they not only know that they can, but they also have the support. And at the same time, they have the network. So you have now the products, how will they sell? Where can they sell? So, the network, you have to connect them to people or organizations. So these are very important if you want to make sure that they make informed decisions and they change their practices. Parang nawala yung definition ko ng methods. Baka nasa susunod. All right, so how do we do extension in the new normal? So in doing that, I reviewed what was presented in one of the conferences that we sponsored here in the College of Public Affairs and Development. So the topmost are the ones who presented here. How did they do extension in the new normal? So you have UP, actually, CABSU presented, no? And this was presented by Dr. Bettina. Hi, Dr. Bettina. So so I reviewed that from the University of Southern Mindanao, from Sulu State College, and Cirela State College. No? Dr. Bettina was actually a discussant in some of the presentations here. And at the same time, I also looked into videos of Central Luzon State University and Tarlac State University. So these are my sources of information. And from what I saw, the extension programs during the pandemic The dominant ones are centered on this. No? The first one is about health and well-being. So there were many webinars when it came to, for example, mental and social and psychological self-care, and that's understandable. There were many webinars in terms of providing their doctors, not online calls to diagnose you. So there were a lot of that. In fact, some universities like USM, for example, and Tarlac State University offered their hostel as a quarantine area. So these are the things that they did and they shared during this webinar. No? And there were a lot about ensuring food for everybody. So there was, gardening, there were webinars. What else in terms of food supply system? So I think those were the dominant ones. No, I didn't see a lot of marketing, but what they did was ensuring that there is food on the table. So backyard gardening was there, community gardening was there in partnership with the LGUs. No? And then there were lots of livelihood programs. KABSU, for example, the project of Dr. Teddy Tipora. Hi, Dr. Teddy. I saw that you had a very good livelihood project where you combined earning money and at the same time people making masks, no? So you combined health there and the need to come up with income. So these are example of livelihood programs. And there were others, in terms of agriculture that was very dominant. I think primarily because the major concern was because it's important that we have access to fresh food, because that was a problem then, no? And problem up to now. And then access to basic services. How can we make sure that people get the right health care, the right food at the right time, fresh food rather at the right time. You have, for example, in another webinar, I talked about it sa part naman ng LGUs, no? And what they did was the LGU, because initially they provided canned goods because they thought, the pandemic would just be for 1 month. And of course, we know now it's not the case. And so later on, they had to do marketing as far as other regions to make sure that their community would have fresh supplies. And so they started distributing fresh vegetable, fresh meat, which is, a little bit scary, primarily because, when you handle meat, when you handle fresh chicken. So for those of you who are in agriculture and health, they catch a lot of viruses and a lot of bacteria in such a limited period of time. Well, that's what they did, no? And I think there's a lot of things that we have to discuss when it comes to ensuring that people have a lot of access. There might be other ways to do that. And then support to remote learning. So a lot of the universities had webinars as to how to improve, for example, our teaching. Sayang pala hindi ako nakagamit ng Mentimeter. Nalimutan ko sa dami ng ginagawa. But using these things, Mentimeter, Slido, for example, so that it's not going to be one way, right? So you have a lot of that. In fact, Sulu State University, for example, also had distributed modules for elementary and high school. So they help elementary and high school teachers come up with modules. And you have, for example, the University of Southern Mindanao, or USM, they highlighted their radio school on the air, no, for their students who do not have internet. And for teachers, I'm sure that's difficult because you have two ways of teaching, no? You have, for example, through Zoom, and then you have another one through radio. So that's a lot of work, right? But yeah, so ito pala, akala ko nawala. So when we talk of methods, you have the use of mass communication. No? So here, it can be in terms of print, it can be in terms of broadcast, it can be in terms of outdoor and transit like posters and banners. It can be in terms of digital media. And later on, we will see that a lot of the changes has to do with the use of digital media. And then we have, for example, group methods. You have a training and educational tours, and this is something that you are very familiar with, the group methods and the individual methods. And we will see when we look into examples that a lot of the changes had to do with digital media. I'd like to invite you to watch this is just 7 minutes, and it's only one. The Central Luzon State University Extension Services, not during the pandemic. When I did a lecture on with CLSU, I had a webinar. Take note that what I gave as examples are all from CAPSU. So let me just repeat them now. We will now look at what they did during the time of pandemic by watching this video. So it's very good that they have a video of what they did. So allow me to just share it with you.
Declared the outbreak an international public health emergency.
What is happening in other countries?
I is positive for the global coronavirus.
I am placing the entire zone under quarantine.
Year 2020 brought a lot of uncertainties to many people, especially with the spread of an unknown disease called COVID-19, which changed our lives in ways we had never experienced before. One of the most affected institutions is the academe. Schools were not allowed to hold face-to-face classes to prevent the virus from further spreading. Even the provision of extension services to clientele was hampered.
Dr. Baconguis, excuse me po.
Government rallied the various sectors to act to mitigate to the impact.
I'm sorry, can you see it?
Yeah, no, ma'am. Actually, yung audio lang po.
Ah, my goodness. Paano ko kaya yun ipapakita? Audio lang ang makita mo because I can see it very well.
Yes, ma'am. Audio lang po yung naririnig namin. Wala po ang video.
Wala ang video. Can I give the link and then can you probably share it?
Yes, ma'am. I will share it din po sa FB Live natin sa comment section to view po.
Okay, so I'll stop share and then I'll give you the link, which is how. Okay, so technical difficulties. I didn't know that I will have it, but I will share with you the. Sorry for that. A few minutes or 1 minute. I'll give it to you sa sa chat.
Yes po, ma'am.
So it's
Currently-
already there. So
Ayan.
can you play it?
Test.
Yes po. Kaya po bang i-play? Pwede naman din skip, pero maganda kasi.
I'll try po, ma'am. Need po kasi mag-join po dun sa group.
Pero you have seen, no, the link?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Ayaw.
So habang siniset up po, so while they're setting it up, as I was saying, no, we were looking at the changes. So I was trying to evaluate what were the major changes in the way we do things, and I noticed that most of the changes really had to were focused on the use of technology, and most of the changes highlighted the use of Zoom, for example, and Facebook. But as we shall see later on, there are many other tools that we have not been using, and this will change the way this will influence the way we do things in the future, no? So the pandemic, they say, will not be totally eliminated, and we will have to, for example, deal with the consequences for even a longer time. And we know that primarily because there have been new variants coming out, right? We thought that it will be just 3 months, and then after that, when we have all been vaccinated, we will go back to normal. But up to now, we have not all been vaccinated, and they're making us go back to the normal, which is, a little bit scary. And I think Metro Manila has announced that they will have face-to-face classes next semester. So I don't know for your KABSU, for example, or for UP, but for UPLB, for that matter, what we have requested is to allow our students who will make use of laboratories. So we want them, for example, to come here so that they can finish their thesis and graduate, no? That's just 200 plus students, and it's very difficult because we have to make sure that they are vaccinated. We have to make sure that where they stay, the dorms are ready, and we have enough spaces where they won't be mingling too much. And then there's food available for them. And what else are we preparing for? The laboratories, we're making sure that there are exhaust fans, and we can accommodate them because they're not going to stay for 1 sem, by the way. We have teachers who decide that they should be here only for a period of time. And so we have to rotate who would be here for, this month and next month or something like that. So that's our changes so far, and that's how we look forward to next sem. The social sciences will basically still be remote learning. I don't know for how long, but for next sem, more or less, we're thinking of the same thing. Mga madam, kumusta na po? Okay pa po ba? Or shall we skip it?
Ma'am, at try po namin i-share. Wait.
Okay, sure. This video placed first in a competition, PAEPI, I think, regional competition.
Visible na po?
Visible, pero wala namang sound.
For a wait po.
Sorry ha, hindi ko akalaing mahihirapan ito.
Wait lang po ulit, mag-try po ulit. Medyo mabagal din po yung aming connection. Pasensya na po.
Bakit kaya hindi ko maipakita yung video? Ano?
Permission to share po ulit, ma'am. Laki-laki.
Year 2020 brought a lot.
Okay na siya.
UI is positive for the novel coronavirus.
I am placing the entire Luzon under quarantine.
Year 2020 brought a lot of uncertainties to many people, especially with the spread of an unknown disease called COVID-19, which changed our lives in ways we had never experienced before. One of the most affected institutions was the academe. Schools were not allowed to hold face-to-face classes to prevent the virus from further spreading. Even the provision of extension services to clientele was hampered. Faced with the alarming situation, the government rallied the various sectors to act to mitigate to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Different interventions were provided to families for their food, livelihood, and other basic sustenance. In Central Luzon State University, work guidelines were implemented for the university to continue operating while adhering to the government's health safety protocols. The University Extension Center, which is at the forefront of technology dissemination and community development efforts, utilized various modalities to be able to reach the various clients and provide quick and timely response to their needs. One of the initial strategies implemented by the University Extension Center in the early months of the Luzon-wide lockdown, specifically in June 2020, is the conduct of CLSU webinar series. The webinar series airs every Wednesday using the Zoom teleconferencing application and has a simulcast at the Facebook page of the University Extension Center. Primarily, the webinars promote agriculture and food production, entrepreneurship, and social awareness, particularly as regards the COVID-19 pandemic. Since its pilot episode, the webinar series has generated over 13,000 participants and reached more than 200,000 Facebook users within the country and abroad. In no time at all, the webinars earned the praises and appreciation of participants, which found the topics useful and gave the activity a consistently excellent rating. The center has also launched the Techno Talk, a magazine-type program featuring the center's extension activities with various units of the university and the client's experiences in adopting the technologies developed by CLSU. It was aired initially in August 2020 at the Extension Center's Facebook page and beginning this March 2021 over DWFA 107.3 FN Radio CLSU. The University Extension Center has also not stopped from rendering extension advisory services directly to the clients. Since one of the extension strategies utilized by the center to reach out to its clients is the provision of advisory services through the use of mobile phones, the personnel have intensified the use of this approach since face-to-face interaction is still being limited. In the late months of the year 2020, the center saw the need to conduct field extension despite the continued threat of COVID-19. The center believes that these services are crucial in order to assist clients with no or limited access to ICT facilities and to provide appropriate advice based on the conditions seen in the farms and homes. Thus, with the permission from the university leadership, extension personnel and partner technical specialists from other units of the university went out to the field once again and undertook extension activities following the health protocols. In the midst of the pandemic, the Techno Village Development Program was born. The program is a concerted effort of the different units and colleges to bring the university to the communities. It aims to enhance the promotion, dissemination, and utilization of CLSU technologies among farmers and other clients in order to accelerate countryside development. The idea is to create a university inside a community, showcasing developed and mature technologies that clients can use to improve their agro-enterprise activities, yield, and income. The program is piloted in 2 sites, namely Science City of Baños and Talavera, both in Nueva Ecija. The communities, however, stand to become important extension, instruction, and research sites of faculty and staff, as well as study and major practice sites of students. Today, the sites showcase the following technologies in collaboration with the local government units, farmer associations, and progressive farmers. Special rice production, Itik Pinas production project, mushroom production, and the aquashade for tilapia production. Aside from these, the CLSU Extension Center also assisted and provided extension services to various socio-economically challenged groups such as indigenous peoples, rural women, 4-piece beneficiaries, and nutritionally at-risk households. Trainings, Coachings and information support services were provided to these groups to capacitate them in undertaking livelihood development activities. Project starter kits such as rice and vegetable seeds, fruit tree seedlings, animal stocks, fingerlings, and other farm inputs were also given to enable families to apply their learning in establishing projects for their food, livelihood, and income. All of these are made possible with the help of partner development organizations. Family-to-family sharing of blessings is encouraged to extend project benefits to more families in the community and promote sustainability. With or without the pandemic, the CLSU Extension Center will continue to pursue its commitment to bring technologies and development assistance to the clients, with the end goal of helping them improve their socio-economic well-being.
Okay, so salamat po. Pwede na po siyang ihinto and I can continue sharing. Thank you very much for your help here. Sorry for the inconvenience. I hope you're still all there. Yeah. Okay, so what do we see from that video? We can see that the extension methods, for example, the new extension methods was the use of mass communication. So you have seen the use of a webinar series, the Techno Talk magazine type program through radio. They also posted their video productions online in their FB, and they had extension advisory services through mobile phones. And after there was an easing out of mobility, they immediately had limited contact with the people. They instituted the Techno Village program, where they said they wanted a university inside the community. They resumed their field extension advisory services, and they distributed livelihood starter packs, and they emphasized that they gave priority to the marginalized or disadvantaged group, and they distributed IEC materials, and they emphasized that they could not have done everything that they did and they are currently still doing if it's not for the collaboration and good partnership that was already developed prior to the pandemic. No? So I think that's one of the things that we have to remember. I also reviewed Tarlac State University. Actually, there were many of them in that video, in that series, but we're not going to watch that anymore. So again, what I saw was the use of mass communication, webinars, video production, distribution of IEC materials. Not everyone had radio, but in the case of CLSU, in the case of UPLB, for example, in the case of USM, where we had radio, so the use of radio was also used. Was also prioritized rather. And then one of the things that I wanted to emphasize for both Tarlac State and also for CLSU was that they have an institutional support where they provided protocols in terms of ensuring how to protect the extension workers, what to do and when to go out, something like that. So they had a memo with regards to that. I know we had a memo for teaching, but for them, they also had a memo on how to do extension work. And they used a program for extension monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. So you don't have to go there, file your report, but rather they use technologies to do that. No? Okay. So from UPLB, because we have a different setup, as you know, while we have the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension, extension is a devolved function for UPLB. So we do it by colleges. No? So we're trying to come up now with a extension agenda at the university. I'm chairing that committee, but it hasn't come out yet, and we're still thinking of what is the best way to do. I mean, we have done it, but what is the best way to articulate everything? No? So probably by next year we would have, but as of the moment, I'm just providing one example, which I am sure you are familiar with. You also have it It's the Bidani program. They have a website. You can go through there. And just like all the others, they would have a series of webinars as well. No? So these are just examples which I culled from their annual report, which is posted in that website. And they also had conference, online conference, and they had an online training. No? So this is a series of webinars where they, package it as a training program. And it ran from 19 to 23 October 2020. So after that series, they gave out a certificate where they had a training program. They did online technical assistance to the different Bidani, areas, and as well as LGUs. They had virtual conversations. They called it VirCons. For a set of people who wanted to discuss a specific topic. So it's just like a webinar series, but it's more focused. And they also have NutriLive School on the air. No? So that's one. And one thing that I found not common to what was done by the others is that here they have Spotify. No? So hindi ko nakita sa iba yon. So ibig sabihin may mga podcasts sila. No? So they had Spotify. Hindi ako familiar sa Anchor, but maybe you know. I know Spotify. Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to highlight this thing. I'm not going to go through everything that is written here, but this is one of the webinars I conducted naman, LGU experiences. So they were most concerned with the loss of income due to breakdown in supply chain. And I would like to highlight this bottom portion here. They said that they were able to do everything that they're doing, coming up with radio programs, coming up with training online, blended learning, e-extension. They were able to do that because they had to do, their people were willing not to shift their paradigms from face-to-face training program to something else, because now everybody's worried, how can we still contribute if we can go to the different places? No? So they adopted a shift in paradigm, and they capitalized on their on their partnership, which was established for a longer period prior to the pandemic. So they capitalized on their partnership with local government units, partnership with DA units, and a partnership with certified learning sites. No, in the case of the Agricultural Training Institute, I know some of you are familiar with their certified learning sites and their accredited extension service providers, because who would, if you're going to do a video, where would that be? You need a farm for that, right? And whose farm will we use? So they had to use the farms of the accredited extension service providers, and these were the people who actually, were willing to be videotaped. So they said without this partnership, collaboration would not have been possible during the time of pandemic. And I think it's the same when you talk about research, right? Because your mobility is restricted, and therefore it's very difficult for you to go to all of the places when you can't travel freely. And so we now go into I think this is the third, facing the future challenges. Now, when it comes to consultations, for example, this is the future of consultation. This is now happening in the first world countries. So for example, here's this technician, she's having problem, and she's trying to consult her supervisor who is working from home. So she just presses something, don't ask me what, but she can talk directly to that person, and she can show what is happening there, no? And she can show, for example, this is my problem, what should I do? Which one should I push? Which button should I push? In a similar manner, when there's an operation, for example, in Africa, somebody from Europe can also help, like, do this and do that, something like that. No? So that's why you have there the, TV. And then if you're fixing a car, a top mechanic can also advise you, and he can look at your problem and advise appropriately, right? On-time consultation. And earlier I already said that there's a completely autonomous farm. That's Harper Adams University. They were able to do that in 2017. When it comes to diagnosing pests, you use, what do they use? I think they use big data science here, or so meaning to say they can, identify which areas have problems. And then in terms of monitoring health, they can attach chips to to animals, for example, and you know which ones are sick and which ones are healthy in terms of harvesting. There will be autonomous pickers in terms of weeding, for example. There will be lasers, and so on and so forth. Which means to say that, my God, why won't this stop? I don't know. Which means to say that one of the things that we have to instill in our mind is that there is now a short life for any skill, right? And this is a concern of HEIs in the formal education as well as the non-formal education, and that's what we call extension. The skills that we acquire now, which is scary, right? The skills that we acquire now, it's not going to last a lifetime. We have to continuously reskill. We have to continuously learn. There are newer things to learn. Now, let's take a look at the use of artificial intelligence. It's going to disrupt labor markets. And that calls for rapid reskilling and change in curriculum, not only in the formal, but in the non-formal setting as well. The use of advanced technologies. So now you can actually make use of these technologies to market products, right? And even control information. So this requires a lot of collaboration. And then you have to understand that whenever we use technologies, this has cost, and not everybody can afford that. Which is why in USM they have a radio, and then you have Zoom. So that will exacerbate inequality, right? And as a university, we're here to make sure that the benefits that can be accorded to Mr. Juan de la Cruz can be accorded to Johnny de la Cruz. So which means to say that there has to be inclusive education. There has to be this one I have to emphasize, local innovations, because the use of technology coming from abroad, if they're not freely shared, it's going to be expensive. Let's take a look at, for example, what do they use now in DA? They use RCM. Anybody? Tell me what is RCM. It slips my mind. But they use this SMS to diagnose, for example, plant diseases. But that is not our technology. It's a good thing that it's freely shared and we can use it. But if we have to pay for it, that's a different thing, right? Which means to say that within us universities, we have to make sure that we have to come up with local innovations that we can freely share with others. So let's take a look at what they're doing in other universities. Stanford University, for example, are they have changed their curriculum. So we're talking of problem solving in biology as a course, where students develop cures based on scientific literature review. And they now have engineering biology, where those from engineering and biology, they have one class together, and they design life forms using computers and bioprint. Why do you do that? Because the biology students would have to know how to use engineering in terms of creating new things. The engineering people would have to understand, for example, what is happening in the laboratory so that they can contribute more. So, there's now fusion of different degrees, So you have, for example, bioengineering, and then you have green chemistry, So where chemistry, biology, and environmental science students come together. In fact, this one is very interesting, cryptography, where students, physics students, design and build musical instruments, and other inventions collaboratively. Okay. So the traditional learning pathway is this stair here, where you have, BS, MS, PhD, you have specializations, and you get it through a defined way, like pursuing BS, MS, and PhD. So that's the usual. But they said now that, there's a lot of changes going on, and the skills that we need, they don't last a lifetime. And in fact, we have to learn how to work with other fields. So now they call it fractal learning pathways, where you have this, and then you can pursue different paths in order to reskill yourselves. No? How do they do that? Here is Stanford 2025. They said that you can, it's no longer just 4 years. Wala na yata ang MRR. So students can come in and they can leave the university so that, they can work. And then they come back after a while. They are now, they share what they have learned, and you have teachers now where teaching you also at the same time your partner in terms of sharing what is new in the outside of the school, what is new in your company, and what else can the school offer you. You see how difficult that is, no? If you're the teacher. Because now you have to also continuously reskill and know what is happening. But that's interesting because now there are several teachers of you in the classroom. Your students are also teachers as well. No? Now, when it comes to non-formal education, what can we learn from all of these new things? No? So I'd like to share with you what we have been doing in PhilEASnet. The slides from 46 to 50 are not mine. These are from Dr. Virginia Cardena's slides. No? So PhilEASnet is a partner of PRC in terms of professionalizing the agriculture sector. No? So we're working toward Philippine Qualifications Framework, Career Progression and Specialization Program, and continuing professional development, or CPD. The CPD, I think you're very familiar with. So there's a working committee that has been formed. So that's the PAA-PQF committee, which the PhilEASnet is heading, no? And here are the different participants from the different organizations. So finalizing these things, and you are familiar with the first one, the academic track. This is what we do, right? But we're coming up with a professional track where you would have a certificate. These are for the practitioners. Certificate of fellowship in specialized agriculture, whatever that is, and there would be several, no? So extension education is here. There would be several along that line. So probably you'll be a certificate of fellowship in what was it that we were doing? Adult education, certificate of fellowship in what leadership, no? So institutional development. So that's what we're trying to come up with under extension education, and a higher form would be certificate of diplomate. No? Okay, so how do we do that? We're trying to come up with, we're trying to identify the different competencies for extension. So the other disciplines are also doing this. It so happened that we are a little bit advanced in PhilEASnet because we are leading the formulation of this. That's Dr. Virginia Cardenas as the chair, overall chair, and for extension, Dr. Gasmen and me are helping her out. So this is the form of PRC that we are filling up. So you have baccalaureate. What are the competencies? Now this is important, the PQF for the baccalaureate degree, because this is going to be the source of the exams, no? So based on this, the examiner, the commissioner, no, would be deciding what questions to ask, and more or less it will guide you in coming up with a curriculum. And then we have the post-baccalaureate degree and then the PhD degree. So more or less we're finished with extension, but the others are not. So what is extension 4.0? So we're saying that the competencies that we need are not only technical. We need soft skills, and we know that if you're a teacher, you know that very well, that the top competencies fall into, for example, critical thinking, collaborative skills, and that's true as well for extension. As we were saying, the extension units would not have been able to do, for example, their videos, their radios, if it's not for the collaborations that they have established long time ago. So you need to develop the technical and the soft skills, technical, especially the use of new technologies. We know for a fact that we have to provide relevant training programs because the lifespan of skills is very short. And therefore, we have to contribute to the continuous reskilling of people. We have to design educational programs based on problems. And we have to make it more interactive, like not right now, that I'm the only one talking. Provide opportunities for continued reskilling. So that's what you do, right? You open up your webinars to others and incorporate technology in our systems. Of course, since I mentioned PhilIasNet, I would like to personally congratulate Kabsu for being a winner for the 2021 Outstanding Extension Project Award, which we just held. So congratulations to Michelle Bono and Dixon Zimero of the Cavite State University for winning this award. And so I would go to the extension research themes. This is very short. I called out some of my presentation. It's not hybrid rice, I'm sorry. This is hybrid corn. So diffusion of hybrid corn. This is a study done in 1940s by rural sociologists. Their interest was how is it that after some time, a lot of people already adopted, no? Almost everyone adopted the hybrid corn. So how did that happen, and why were there differences? How is it that there were people who adopted it earlier, and why is it that there were people who adopted it later? And this would be the basis of what you know now as the adoption diffusion theory, no? And essentially they ask very important research questions. So what variables are related to innovativeness? What is the rate of adoption of an innovation, and what factors explain this rate? What role do different communication channels play at various stages in the innovation's decision process? So these are very important questions which eventually led to the diffusion and adoption and diffusion theory. Now, let's try to come up with research questions for extension projects that you have been implementing. So for example, the livelihood project. So let's say that you have a program for groups of housewives. So there are many groups, right? Engaged in particular livelihood activities. And here you did several things like training programs, techno demo, distribution of video. You provided support, you linked them to financial capital and the market. Your report to your school and probably to CHED would be a narration of what happened, highlight of accomplishments, success stories, ROI. That is your report. But that is not your research, right? Because research here would call for a research question. So you cannot submit to a journal a report. You have to submit to a journal something that is based on research and would have contribution to the body of knowledge, right? Not only specific to your project. So a report cannot be immediately transformed into a journal. So I was thinking before, how come people are continuously asking me if I have, a standard TNA? Only to realize that extension has been reduced to training, no? So it's just one of the methods as you have seen. And they were very interested in the standardized TNA because they said that is the first step in their extension program. No? So I hope you know that that is not the case. And so they also asked me if I have a standard evaluation form, and I would always say none. But every time somebody asked me, after some time I realized that the reason why they ask a standardized evaluation is because they think that extension can be reduced to a training program. No? So again, it is not, because it depends on, as I've said, it depends on your theory of change. And therefore, the result of a TNA and the result of a pre-test and post-test cannot be in itself published, because that is part of your report, right? But it's not your research. So your research should be based on a research question. What would you be interested to know in the first place that needs to be investigated and is currently not well explained as far as literature is concerned? If you're able to do that and answer that in the course of your engagement with the community, then you have a very much publishable document, right? Because that is a journal. So let's say you have a livelihood project, no? Maybe you're interested in social capital. How does social capital and networks explain the success or failure or groups of women entrepreneurs? That's a valid research question, right? So now you look at the research literature. What does it have to say? How can I investigate social capital and networks in my groups of women? And then you start, because you are with them all the time, that gives you a rich insight on asking them questions, right? So then you can discuss more social capital, then you can discuss more networks, right? So now you have a publication out of your extension involvement. You can also ask, how did partnership foster product and market innovations? Because you have probably seen that one group is better than the other, earning more than the other, and you have probably seen that it is because they have contacts with this Makati Women's Club, something like that. So you cannot just narrate that and submit it to a journal, right? You have to transform that thing into a research question and answer it in a way that a journal is written. So you have to ask the question, you have to have a theoretical point of view, and then you write that. Which I'm sure you can, because you're always in contact with these people. Or you can probably, look at the entrepreneur side. How does entrepreneurship change gender relations between men and women? Husband and wife, if you're into gender, right? Because now the women are earning more than the husband, for example. So does that change anything? That's a valid research question. So your literature review would be about entrepreneurship, women, and relations between husband and wife. So now you have a very good research and you have a very good article for publication. Let us say that it's about production and marketing support for smallholder pineapple, because this is done in Sibiswa, but it can be anything, no? So what are the researchable areas? It can be information and educational gaps in production and marketing. It can be about farmers' well-being. You can ask, for example, what are the information-seeking behaviors of smallholder pineapple farmers, if that is a valid question, because I know nothing about pineapple production. And then what is the future of intergenerational farming in smallholder pineapple farmers? So this one, because I have read something about children not interested in farming. So maybe you can ask that question if it's valid to ask in the context of pineapple or coffee, for example, in your area. I should have changed that to coffee, no? So finally, when you have an extension project improving access to food, once again, you report on your activities and accomplishment, but you need to ask a research question if you want a publication out of your involvement here in this project, right? So I'll just go to the last because I think I'm running out of time. How did COVID-19 change the diets of people? Oh my goodness, I can answer. How did gardening change diets of people in terms of food utilization and practices, right? So here I made a, this is another webinar conducted with LGUs. I made a summary of what happened when it comes to breakdown in the food chain, and what the responses of the government were. So let us say that you have a project to help smallholder farmers as affected by COVID-19 in the supply chain. So what are kinds of questions that you can ask? In what ways are smallholders affected by lockdown? Let me just jump here. Who were the users of e-marketing? And how did that help ease the access to fresh food? In what ways did blockchain processes help facilitate the movement of products? I was trying to read about blockchain and its implementation in the Philippines. I can see very little literature, but in other countries, in India, in Africa, they've been using this a lot. In India, because there are many innovators, and in Africa, because there are many international organizations working with them, but I'm not very sure about the Philippines. No, I can't see. But in any case, yeah, speaking of PhiliasNet, I would like to invite you also to be part of PhiliasNet. We're the ones, as I've said, working for PQFA. We field board examiners, as we are the PRC accredited professional organization. So the board examiner for agricultural extension came from our recommendation. We chair the PQFA for agriculture. We have a website, kindly visit them on our activities. No? Okay. And we also have a magazine, the Scope. We launched this last year. So it's freely downloadable from our website. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much po, Dr. Baconguis, sa very timely and informative topics po. Ayan. Ma'am, meron po tayong comment from Sir Felino. Ang RCM daw po ay Rice Crop Manager. Thank you po, Sir Felino.
Crop manager, oo
Yes,
nga.
ma'am. Nanonood po siya via FB Live, ma'am.
Oo, sige.
Yes.
Alam mo, speaking of rice crop manager, no? We have rice crop manager. It's not our own, right? The reason why we're using this because we have a partnership. Rice has a partnership with Erie. But we do have, for example, technologies like the speed tech from UPLB, but we're not using that because we don't have funds to make sure that it's, mainstream, for example, in DA. No? So that's sad because that is a local innovation. Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
Ayan, ma'am, may mga comments po tayo from our chat box. Thank you very much daw po and via FB Live. Meron ako, ma'am, na filter na message sa ating FB page, FB Live. Sabi po niya, thank you so much, Dr. Baconguis. Thank you for sharing again your expertise to CBSE community. Thank you for inspiring us for quality extension activities. Yes, ma'am, very well po. Napaka-thankful po namin for allowing us po. Allowing niyo po na makapag-share po ngayong hapon. From our comment section dito po sa chat sa Zoom, Dr. Rowena, thank you very much for very enlightening talk. It really fed our neurons whenever we receive good knowledge from you.
Salamat, JC.
Yes, ma'am. May question na tayo. Pwede na po siguro tayo mag-proceed din po sa sa ating open forum po. Ayan, ma'am. Para diretso na po tayo. So, ang question niya, ma'am, is, do you have any tips or recommendation as to how we can improve our frameworks in extension in the university, especially in the application of it in different colleges and campuses, since some college and campuses are in the technical and others are in the social science arena? Ayan, ma'am.
Actually, we have a discussion of that, no? Because as I've said earlier, I'm sharing the committee in coming up with a UPLB extension agenda, and it's the first time that we're attempting to have one. Because as I've said, the extension is a default function. It depends on the college priorities because some are into technical and some are not into technical. But every one of us are required to do research, instruction, and extension. No? So how are we going to do that? So in coming up with the extension agenda that we are currently finalizing, what I did was to make sure that I am able to account for in the framework that I am proposing what is currently done. Because as I have countered in our discussion, the first way, because they're always saying extension is the least recognized and the least incentivized. So while they say that, I was saying that if we want to recognize it and if we want to incentivize it, the first really is to recognize what everybody is doing. Because what we recognize is the continuum between research and technology transfer. So if you notice, a lot of it will be at RDE agenda, and E is always, a function of research thrust. So where do you now locate, for example, those done by those who are not aligned with technologies, no? So it's very easy, for example, for the College of Agriculture to talk about extension because they come up with technology. So the E there is directly related to research, right? So you have the continuum. So let's talk about the social sciences where you don't have technologies and you do not generate technologies, correct? Or let's talk about political science. How do you now relate that to a technology? You cannot, because unless of course I don't know, when you have a very rich imagination, maybe you can. Or let's talk, for example, with those who are in education. How do you now relate that to technology and do an extension about that? So for one, it would require a collaboration. So that's one, right? The way we do extension right now is by college because you are required to do that. So which means to say that that kind of requirement actually limits our creativity because you have seen in our examples that they're now marrying, for example, engineering and biology, chemistry and environmental science. But still in extension, we're trying to separate by colleges. No? So as always, when we look at winners in extension, it would always be those who are doing extension in relation with agriculture, because there's a technology there, to the detriment of everybody else. So when we talk, for example, of what the Harper University did, no? They asked the agriculture students to work with computer science, to come up with robots that can be tested in the field. Oh, I don't know how far we can do that here in the Philippines, but the requirements are joint. So you have those in agriculture coming up with robots, designing robots with computer science students. No, that's how you foster innovations, which can result to both of them working on extension later on, right? But it can be done only with collaboration. So going back to your question, how did I answer that question in UPLB? No? So as I've said, the first really is to recognize what everybody is doing, because if we just stick to the RDE continuum, we're not recognizing what all other colleges are doing, because there's less of the research and extension, technology and extension there. So how do we recognize, for example, the webinars done by in terms of teaching? It's not really RDE continuum in the sense that the results of research of our college we are extending. What we extend there is the principles of teaching. So it's not a result of your research, right? So we cannot talk of the RDE continuum. And I said, if we want to have an extension agenda, we have to put in the document what all other universities or colleges, rather, what the other colleges are doing. So that's the first step. If you want to incentivize it, the first step is really to recognize and say that, this is a valid extension activity that you are doing. Probably not the best way, but it's a start, right? So the second is how we can promote collaboration among the different colleges, because the way we do it now is, of course, per college, because you are required by your, what is it now, PBB. You are required by that, no? So part of that is also to educate, for example, our accreditors, our, DBM, for example. DBM, by the way, has, I think what DBM did recently in terms of recognizing extension is also helpful, because DBM no longer just accept one training, one webinar as an extension program. They're saying now that it has to be really a program, no? It cannot be just one webinar. So as I was saying earlier, of course, there's always a way to go about it because we're not prepared. But I think it's a positive thing on the part of DBM. What we did is to combine several webinars and came up with one program in relation to this topic. You can actually do that, right? Because I wanted to highlight the one done by Bidani, where they had several webinars, and then as a result of that, you have a training certificate. I think that's the future now, because you have, several parts where they can attend. They can, if they attend these different combinations, then you have this training certificate for them. Because also when we talk of training, it has more credit than just attending a webinar, right? So if you combine all of them, then you have this training certificate. Then probably later on you can think of how all of this you can give a diplomate, because that's where we're going, right? We're thinking of skilling these people, reskilling these people, and giving them diplomates or fellowship. So that's one way to go about it. We need to improve on our methods of educating people, and that's one way. So did I answer you? The first is recognition. The second is promoting collaboration. No? And the third really is for you to produce contribution to knowledge. And that is why I was very much interested in the topic given to me about extension research. Because a lot of people do not want to do extension because they said, well, there's really nothing there, no? There is something there because you're helping the people. The other is there is something there because you can actually do research at the same time that you're helping people. I just didn't want to talk about action research because that's another topic. But yeah, you can do research while doing extension if you want publication out of that intervention. So siguro that's one way of incentivizing it, no? So you have that. I can think of 3 so far.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Other questions po? Will the Mandanas ruling, the devolution of some functions of the national government, empower the agricultural extensions, or do we need to develop a new extension framework for this ruling and advent of the new emerging technologies for extension? This is from participant from FB Live.
Right. I actually talk about how SUC should respond to Mandana's ruling in the recently concluded PhilESnet conference, no? And okay, so how do I start? I think the first thing that we should understand is the principles of devolution, okay? Because devolution actually is a concept that we appropriated because we saw that it worked in first world countries. Okay, you have to read the literature on why we have devolution, why we implemented it. It was because it worked very well in the first world countries, but there are prerequisite requirements on how it should work. Number one is that you have citizenry who are very much active in the affairs of the state. Okay. Number two, I forgot the others, but number two, in terms of practical ways, they actively engage with the local government units. So when there are consultations, they are there. You don't have to incentivize them with free food, for example, or t-shirt. They are there. They make their opinions clear. They are able to emphasize. And number three, so I just tell you what I remember, no? They can influence the results of, for example, elections, no? Nangyayari ba na na-elect ang mga taong maganda ang performance o hindi? Sabi niya kasi ito ang failure ng devolution dito. Unang-una, hindi naman active ang mga participants, mga tao sa mga events, no? Pangalawa, hindi naman nangyayari na yung maganda ang performance, yun lang ang na-elect. Sa mga studies on devolution, pati yung mga pangit ang performance, nakaka-3 terms, tapos yung anak naman niya, tapos pabalik naman siya after. So, how can you claim that devolution is the same as all others? So, the other requirement is that there is also financial devolution. So, here, ang ina-address ng Mandanas ay yung financial devolution because in the past, we devolved the functions, but not the finance part, right? So, ito yung mga functions na gagawin nyo, pero ang pera may iwan sa DA, something like that. No? So, now, they're trying to correct that by making sure that, ayusin ko lang yung ilaw, yung bintana. Okay. They're trying to correct that by making sure that the money now goes to the local government units. No? So, there's financial devolution. Unfortunately, the question really is that with the financial devolution, is it enough? Number one, that's the question. Number two, are the people actually prepared? So, is it enough? So, in that study done by PIDS, I think the increase is along 27%. No? So, it's billions of people. We're talking of billions here. But we're also talking of so many municipalities and provinces, right? 81 provinces and 1,000, I don't know, I forgot. 1,000 plus municipalities. So overall, that's around 27% increase. So is it enough? Certainly, for the small municipalities, it's not enough. Lalong-lalo na they don't have a lot of collaborators. No? So hindi siya enough, lalong-lalo na sa mahihirap na municipalities. And that is why they have this growth equity fund to help the small local government units. And in terms of SUCs, that is where we should enter because sila yung mapag-iiwanan, no? So tiningnan, may study din kasi na, okay, I'm talking of studies, no? There are studies kasi that would show that the devolution worked very well for regions such as ours. Because number one, we are much ahead of the others. We have resources, we're better off, and we're very near markets like, Metro Manila. So we're very near that. But all others are not that successful because they don't have these conditions. No? So ibig sabihin, the devolution would work out well for others and not for most. Not for most. And with this Mandanas ruling, ganun uli, no? Baka mas marami pa ang not enough ang pera at yun na dapat ang tutulungan. And number two, that's in terms of money. Number two, in terms of preparedness to absorb all the functions. Now you have to go back to what the LGC says about the functions that should be absorbed by the local government unit in terms of agriculture. No? So they normally associate it with extension. But if you read through, it's not just extension, there's the regulatory function, there's the marketing function, there's the livelihood function. So kung yan lahat ay gagawin, kakayanin ba ng local government unit? Now we know also that in the local government unit, the municipal agriculture position is not mandated. So meron siguro iba dyan na walang MAU, hindi ba? Meron namang may MAU pero hindi naman yun ang ginagawa niya. So there's a lot of varieties in what is happening in the field. And so the question is, will that result to a new extension paradigm? Well, there are tests now about province-led extension. You've heard of that probably, what we call PAFES, because they're saying that the municipality is a very small unit to actually push for agricultural modernization, and therefore we move now to a province-wide. But that's a test for us, no? And that's DA is doing it in partnership with a group of people called CAMP. And the thing is, while it's being tested, the role of the SUCs once again is to help those who are in the disadvantaged position, and to this is an opportunity for us to design programs, educational programs, to help our agricultural workers in our local government units. Also, yeah, that's my answer. Hopefully, when we do that, we can also contribute to the discipline. So as I was saying earlier, those into extension should not just limit themselves to providing training programs. You should do research as well, because how can you come up, for example, with new paradigm? How can you come up with new ways of doing it if you just continue providing training programs? Then we cannot have new models, we cannot have new paradigms. The new paradigms would have to come from your experience and would have to come from your research based on your experiences. And certainly I would look forward to your recommendations along this line.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baconguis. While we are waiting for another questions, ma'am, I will read some comments. Thank you very much, Ma'am Weng. You are always an inspiration.
Thank you very much. I hope so.
Thankful to hear you again, Ma'am Weng. Very informative webinar class today. Hope all of us in the academy can really do enough extension activities so as to help our community too.
Thank you, Dr. Ignot.
Yeah. I think we have another questions, ma'am. For last na lang po siguro to, ma'am, for this session po. Will it work for the employees to be devolved? In the past, early 90s, extension workers were transferred to LGUs. The problem is most LGU don't realize their function. So they transfer to the new roles, new functions, new departments, so they eventually resign.
Are you talking of those from the national government?
Yes, I think so, ma'am.
Yeah. So those in the national, another person talked about that. No? Sana nakinig ako na mabuti. Somebody talked about the professionalization of ano ba yun? O yun yung topic niya, yung mga madidevolve. So doon sa madidevolve, from what I get is that they can actually retire, no? Yung magiging redundant. They can retire and then they can actually be rehired as new employees. So I think yun na, hindi forced ang LGUs to absorb them. So what will happen to these redundant employees? There's an offer for retirement with an, I think, a better package, no, than when you retire now without the Mandanas ruling. So yun, they can retire and then the LGUs are not required to absorb them, unlike before na they will transfer, no? You are transferred. That is not the case now because the LGUs have their own people now, right? Unlike before, wala kasi, so transfer talaga. So the situation is different because incentive to retire, ang alam ko sa na-pick up ko, incentive to retire and then they can be rehired as a new employee.
Thank you so much po, Dr. Baconguis, for those responses and replies. So, wala na po tayong questions. Puro acknowledgement na lang to, ma'am. Thank you. Lahat po sila nagpapasalamat for your topic today, ma'am. You're an inspiration. Yan, no? I grab ko na rin po ang opportunity, ma'am, para sa ating photo.
Okay.
Paki-open po ang ating mga cameras para po sa ating mga participants.
Habang nag-open po kayo, actually, yung mga nilalagay ko na lessons, kinukuha ko din sa mga research ko about your experiences, no? I'm just sad na there are very few who actually do research in extension, and I hope with my sharing about research extension teams, more would do extension research, no?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Pa-open po ang ating mga cameras. For the first slide po, smile po muna tayo. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Next slide, please. 1, 2, 3. Third slide. 1, 2, 3. And last. 1, 2, 3.
Iva Michelle.
Sorry, ma'am. Nakamute pala ako, ma'am. Hindi po matatapos ang ating episode today without giving thanks po again to Dr. Baconguis, and we will proceed po for the awarding of the certificate. Allow me to read the citation, ma'am. Republic of the Philippines, Cavite State University in Dang, Cavite presents this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Rowena Dela Torre-Baconguis in grateful recognition of the invaluable expertise rendered as resource speaker, leading to the success holding of Session 3 Extension Methods in the New Normal, webinar workshop series on extension for coordinators and implementers, held on November 10, 2021 via Zoom and FB Live. Signed, Dr. Camila Polinga, Asian Engineer, Officer in Charge, Office of the University President. Thank you so much, ma'am. Bigyan po natin si ma'am ng virtual applause.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Bettina. Okay.
Do you have, ma'am, last word po, imparting for today po? Imparting words para po sa ating
I just said hi
participants.
to Dr. Bettina. And once again, thank you very much, really. I'm really happy to be back at KABSU virtually, no? So dati nandyan ako. I do, training there or, my speakership, but I'm very happy to be giving this talk with you, sharing it with you, and hopefully I can inspire more. Sabi niyo, inspiring. So salamat naman.
Yes, ma'am.
I can inspire more people, extension workers, to do extension research, because that's the only way we can be counted, we can be recognized, and we can be incentivized. Karamihan po ng research ko pala ay about extension, no? I do a lot of review of literature. I write about experiences that were conducted
Mhm.
And so doon po nanggagaling yung mga research ko. So kaya po na-awardan daw ako ng award sa research, pero karamihan doon extension related. And sana po marami pa po ang gagawa noon para dumami po tayong mag-a-advocate for extension.
Yes, ma'am. Knowledge ko na rin, ma'am, yung mga participants po natin from other SUCs na nanood po ng inyong pong session for today. From VSU, from BAT State U, Batangas State University, Palawan State University, SIPAC, Navalasco Farmers Incorporated, and NWSU, Northwestern Summer po. Yan, ma'am. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am Weng, marami pong salamat, and to all our participants, saka po yung mga friends natin from other agencies for attending. Salamat po.
Thank you. Okay na ba tayo? We can leave?
Yes, ma'am. May mga reminders na lang po kami for the closing before for the closing prom. Thank you so much po again, Dr. Baconguis.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ayan. Meron po para po sa ating mga implementers and coordinators. I will be sending po the assignment po from our previous speaker. Siguro po sa atin na lang pong group chat at sa private group po natin sa FB ng extensionist. And then, kita-kits po ulit sa session 4 ng ating webinar workshop. The source speaker po natin si Dr. Josefina T. Dizon from UPLB again. So, time lang po ang ating recognition. So, don't forget to evaluate po. We will be, excuse me, ilalagay po namin yung evaluation link dito po sa Zoom and sa comment box po sa FB Live. Again, thank you so much po. At bago po tayo mag-left po sa ating Zoom, kantahin po muna natin ang ating CVSU hymn. Thank you po again, Dr. Baconguis, and sa ating participants.
Thank you so much po.
Reminder po sa evaluation, open lang po ang ating link until tomorrow po ng 8 a.m. Thank you.